What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Undrunken Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, and I want you to join me as I talk with real people and have super gritty conversations about their journeys to becoming undrunken. So let's go. Dump the drink because it's time to get this party started. What's up, y'all? This week I'm chatting with Ryan S., who requested we do audio only, which is totally okay. Undrunken is a safe space, and I never want anyone to hesitate to share their story. One of my future guests is even going to use a fake name, which is all good. What's important to me is my guests show up authentically, and every single one has. So I'm grateful for that. Ryan is no different. He shares some ugly experiences and some beautiful inspirations. He was introduced to Undrunken by Zach, and I love it when guests bring others into the Undrunken community. Speaking of community, it's almost March and I'm finding myself coming out of that winter hibernation mode and starting to get excited for longer days. Seriously, the sun's going to set at 7:30 here in less than a month, at least in the Pacific Northwest. And longer days mean it's time to start riding with the mountain bike teams again. And I'm back to coaching this year, so I'm super stoked. I'll still be emceeing the cross country races, and this is also hands down the busiest time of the year for me. A lot of my clients with my promotional product business are from the mountain bike community. So with mountain bike race season starting, I'm managing a bunch of team stores and doing orders for shops and organizations in our mountain bike community. Everybody's getting shreddy for that time of year. One of these clients is also a really dear friend of mine, and I'm so thankful for her. Cat Sweet, she kept me in mountain biking when I was ready to leave years ago, and we've worked together on so many different levels in her business and my business, and she's always one of my biggest fans. She referred Kelly Quinn, Throttle Girl, to share her story, and I just really feel blessed to have Kat in my corner. I wouldn't be doing, literally, for work or fun, what I do without her. So check out her episode. I don't know. I was thinking about asking if she would come back for a follow-up. So let me know what you think. Let's dive into Ryan and his journey to Undrunken. Welcome to the Undrunken Podcast, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. So Zach introduced us and had, just said that he had talked with you after his episode and that you had a good story. And so you and I started chatting.
Yeah, no, Zach's a good guy. I mean, I was a little surprised when he suggested this because, I mean, we knew each other, I mean, in high school, but, I mean, have kind of drifted or just not kept up communication. So it's been kind of fun to follow his journey as well. So
Awesome. Yeah. And so let's just start with your story. How long have you been undrunken?
I've been entirely sober for a little over 4 years
now. And share with us, what led you to that point?
I mean, it was certainly it was a long journey to get to that point. You know, I managed to keep most of my experience with alcohol. Didn't really start until I had, gotten out of high school and was 18. And, it you know, started out pretty simple. There were like some heavy drinking episodes, at parties or whatever, but um, it there was a time where I felt like, I was in control. And then, it progressed, and, a big thing for me, I joined the army when I was pretty young. And that was probably my first exposure to just really heavy drinking culture and behaviors. And, you know, on one hand, I really appreciate my time in the military, but at the same time, like, over those 12 years, I mean, lines really kind of blurred and some of those drinking behaviors were really normalized for me. Um, Whereas, outside of that culture, people would probably look at that and be like, yeah, we're not doing that. um, I also I got into college a little bit later. It wasn't right out of high school, but the military helped pay for a lot of that. And I went to what's traditionally a heavier drinking school and picked up some more uh, kind of heavier drinking behaviors. And it didn't quite set me up for success. I mean, I would also say that I pretty firmly believe at this point that I have some adverse genetics um, in relation to alcohol in my family, and I just didn't really pay attention to some of those warning signs. So, um, it's just something that progressed for me to a point where it was a major reason my first marriage didn't work out. And really, by about 28, 29, I was mostly drinking every day and using alcohol to kind of check out and cope with stress and anxiety and depression and things that I didn't want to deal with. And um, so that went on for about 3 years. And by the time I was 32, I got in some legal trouble. I'd had um, a small incident when I was in the army that mostly kind of went away. It was like a slap on the wrist kind of situation. But at 32, I got in trouble, and it wasn't going to go away on its own. Uh, and unfortunately, I was still drinking in that period. As I look back on it, and it's just kind of like an insanity. I would go to court and then be drinking that night, and there were some extremes. And you hear about people's concepts of like rock bottom. And I would tell myself, well, I'm not homeless, and I still have a job. Then I lost my job. And um anyway, it's funny to me because I sometimes tell people, like, I didn't come to the realization that I need to stop until I'd kind of bounced a little bit. So if rock bottom's down here, I like hit the bottom and then came up a little bit. Um, and that was my realization point. So, I'd felt for a long time that things weren't totally in my control. Um, and it did, I did a lot of thinking or contemplative. I mean, I've heard there's like a scale of like pre-contemplative and contemplative. And like, there was a good couple of years where, I was like, doing all my own research on like what makes you an alcoholic, or how do you know if you have a drinking problem, and looking, looking at like what does treatment look like, what are 12-step programs like, and still having a lot of resistance, like trying to convince myself maybe that, okay, maybe I'm not that, maybe I just have a drinking problem. um
I can handle it.
yeah, I can handle it. Or yeah, for a very long time it was I'm gonna fix this on my own. uh, and you know I sometimes have some regret around that, and turning away from some of the traditional resources, because I couldn't handle it on my own. And I look at that now as, you know, years that I could have been, in a better place. But um, so all of that to say, my first kind of date that, I woke up and was just like, I need to try stopping, was New Year's Day of 2018. Um, and that was still very much, I'm going to try this on my own. Yeah, I'm just going to not drink. Um, and in some circles, that's like sobriety on self will or white knuckling or whatever you want to call it. I did try attending a program for about a year, that was not a 12-step program because I still had feelings about those and thought I knew what that was, and I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't there yet. But um, and um, that worked for a little while. I probably put together about 9 months not drinking. Um, and then I kind of had this, thought creep into my head. And I mean, some of it is culturally like the normalization of drinking and like feeling like, well, normal people drink. I'm abnormal because I'm not. And like having some time not drinking, I started to get the thought that maybe I'm not as bad as I thought. Maybe I could try this again. Um, so I did some, experimental drinking, about 9 months into that year. And, the first time or two, I was really like, I'm only gonna have one drink, or I'm only gonna have two drinks and I'm done. Um, and I did that, off and on for about 3 weeks, and then I went to a wedding, um, and pretty much completely fell off the rails, and went through, that was like early October, and went there through the holiday season, just really drinking heavily, um, and not enjoying it. Like kind of having everything come back to me and be like, this is starting right over where I left off, and like there's still no control here, and it impacted my life and the people around me. Um, so really about the end of January in 2019, uh, I I still very much felt like I needed to stop, and probably felt in a worse place, and that by that time it wasn't the first time, but like the feeling that uh that there was something wrong, and that like for me, I didn't know what I couldn't envision life continuing to drink, but I was having a very hard time envisioning life without it, especially just because my whole adult life that had been part of it. Um, so that was the point where, I guess maybe I'd just been sufficiently humbled that I decided I was gonna, that maybe I didn't know what was gonna fix this, and I did start a 12-step program, um, and you know, it worked, or it seemed to work. I mean, I met a lot of people with similar stories, and I could see that they had success, and they weren't miserable, which was kind of a preconceived notion that I'd had for a long time, was that just people get together and talk about how they can't drink, um and you know, had success with that. And, for another year, 2019, I mean, I was not drinking. Um, I really started to make some progress in putting my life back together. I had a good job. I met my wife. Um, and things were, I was really starting to enjoy, um, starting to feel like I could enjoy sobriety. Um, but even that, I mean, for a while there, I like to say that I'm good at not drinking for about a year, and then I fall off. Also, about 10 months in, um, I was starting to have that thought, again, that persistent, like, well, maybe I can be normal or I can control this. And um, I don't know, I guess I kind of like to blame. Blame's probably not the right word, but a family member I was really close to died. And I'd already been kind of having those thoughts. Um, and I think at that point, I kind of gave myself permission um, to drink or to relapse. And there were a couple instances again. Um, but this time I had all these things going on in my life, and in very short order, uh, it was apparent and also, communicated to me that wasn't going to work. So I still refer to that as a relapse, but it was very short lived, and I'd had enough experience at that point that I kind of felt like I knew what I needed to do. So I just got back into the program I was working, and my last drink was November 16th of 2019. Um, and what works for me has been, I guess, doubling down on that 12-step program. Um, a big thing for me, um, is kind of learning to not feel like I'm the only one with this problem, because it can feel very isolating. Like, I'm the only one that drinks like this. I'm the only one that's ever experienced this. And just building those connections with other people that, I've come to the same conclusion. I mean, whether they're on the same path I'm on or not, I feel like there's kind of an upswell or resurgence of a sobriety movement right now, which kind of makes it an exciting time. Or, putting down the drink and kind of denormalizing, which has been very refreshing. That, you know, alcohol doesn't have to be the norm, and there's a lot of reasons to not drink. And if you're one of those people, there's a community, and probably, I've done it my way, but I think there's a lot of different paths to alcohol cessation. And probably the biggest thing for me was finding that there is a community of people that, one, don't drink, and two, that you can be happy. It doesn't have to be this societal misinformation that if you don't drink, you're not normal, or you're not,
You're
par-
boring.
you're boring, you're part of the fun. I mean, some of the most interesting people I've met, um, have been in sobriety, which is really great and a blessing, because I know one of my biggest fears, when I was in that contemplation, um, was that my life wasn't going to be the same. It was going to be boring, or, and thing for me too, that, I try and operate with a level of anonymity, but at the same time, like, if somebody asks me or they know, I definitely want to share that experience because, I was somebody that towards the end, I didn't think I could ever stop drinking. I got pretty dark there for a while, and it was like either I'm going to do this until I die or I'm going to kill myself doing it.
How much were you drinking?
I mean, the last year or so, I mean, I was probably drinking every day. Um, you know, the last couple months, I mean, it was like, lining up at 7-Eleven at 6 o'clock in the morning because, I drank everything I had the night before and I'd wake up and feel like I needed more, which is certainly somewhere I never thought I would be, and definitely the position where, this isn't fun anymore. It somewhere along the line shifted into, I need this to feel normal, or I need this to check the anxiety that is just out of control at this point. And
What did rock bottom feel like? Because you're describing like the drinking part, lots of anxiety, right? Like when you hit rock bottom before you bounced, what did that feel like?
um, I mean, it feels very hopeless. Not knowing how you're going to make any progress, feeling like you're stuck in place. I mean, for me, I have two children from my first marriage, and I feel like my behavior and my drinking led me to kind of check out and walk away when that marriage ended. And by the time I was, really at my bottom, I didn't see how I could have a relationship with them. How I, felt like I just destroyed that. I mean, I was at the tail end of uh, legal trouble. I mean, without a ton of details, but I hit another car. Um, you know, driving intoxicated, which is something at one point I said I'd never do, and that became you know part of the normalized behavior that I was exhibiting.
Yeah.
Um, I was having conflicts with the people I lived with at that point about how much I was drinking, and that was a hard pill to swallow because they were and still are active drinkers, but for even them to be like, you got a problem, um, very demoralizing, um, and just feeling stuck. Feeling
Yeah.
like I know I have to change somehow, and I just don't know how. It's very isolating, kind of like I shared earlier. I mean, you feel alone, and even if you feel like you need to quit, you just don't know how or what that looks like. It's and it's a big it's taking a big step because it's something you've done for years and years, really the majority of my adult life, and then you're removing something, and there's almost like, it's not good for you, but there's almost a sadness. It's like, this is something that I can't allow myself to do anymore, but it's also something I've always done.
I really identify with people who talk about having a relationship with alcohol because it does feel like there's consistently, when people I talk to and myself, there's almost a grief that goes along with it. Like, no, we're not going to hang out anymore. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because, for a very long time, at some point there was a shift. Alcohol, it, it was my friend. It was when I didn't want to feel basically when I didn't want to feel, my negative emotions or things I didn't want to deal with. I mean, alcohol was there, and getting away from that, especially when you've gotten yourself to a point that you don't have a lot of human connections, that also can feel lonely and isolating.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons community is so important,
Yeah.
right? Uh, what's been the most challenging part of being sober for you?
I feel grateful to say that at this point, I'm going to knock on wood and, nothing's a guarantee, but I feel like I've finally let go um, of some of those feelings that like I'm not normal or I'm not able to fully participate in, um, an active life. Um, but I will say, like, throughout my journey, that was probably the biggest hurdle for me. And I mean, in a couple instances, I mean, that line of thinking, I mean, led to relapse, just, you know, maybe I can be normal or I can try this again, now that I've had this experience of not. There's been a couple tries at this, and I feel like this time I'm probably the most comfortable I've ever been with that this is just something that's not part of my life,
Hmm.
and it stopped being so much I can't do this. It's more I don't want to do this, like, which is a real light switch or has been a real light switch for me. And that, I mean, I could pick up, any day, but like that desire isn't there. There isn't
Yeah.
that thought in the corner of my mind that, man, I really just want to be like anybody else or everybody else. Like that has really subsided. And I attribute a lot of that to having a community of people that don't drink too. Because, it's been enough time now. And I meet new people all the time that, they have active, productive, healthy lives. And, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's actually kind of a lie that everybody drinks.
Hmm.
I think, um, I think and don't quote me because I could be wrong, but I think statistically the majority still does not. Um, but just the alcohol industry and society at large do a very good job of kind of hiding that and leading you to believe that you're missing out on something or everybody but you is doing this. And
You're weird if you don't drink.
yeah, and yeah, so I mean, back to the original question. My biggest struggle hurdle has been breaking free of that feeling that like I'm not normal if I'm not drinking or that I'm missing out on something, and transitioning past those feelings has really made me feel a lot more secure today in being sober and continuing to choose not to drink.
What are some of the things that have been like joys that you didn't expect in this? Because
Um,
I dare say you were kind of a pessimist going into this.
oh yeah, no, I mean, when I finally started trying, I mean, it was very much I have to because I don't see any other way. But joys for me, I've gotten things or received things that I didn't think were possible anymore. I was traumatized by my divorce, even though a lot of it was directly attributable to my behaviors and my drinking. But I didn't really think finding a romantic partner again was an option. I met my wife as I was trying to get sober, and you know, that has been a blessing. I mean, she came to me with a child. So I got a stepdaughter out of, you know, kind of changing my life. It's a work in progress, but I've been able to reestablish connections and make progress on a relationship with my children. Um, I've gotten back on my feet, um, career wise and financially, whereas, it was looking pretty bad when I was, towards the bottom there. Um, I, and it took some time to see it this way, but it's been a joy just meeting all these new people in this community that, doesn't drink. And it's not a given that you have to, or you're just going to be unhappy. I'm starting to come to a point now where, like working with others and maybe sharing my experience could help somebody else make positive change. Um, you know, that's something, I would hope for. Like, I don't want to just keep this to myself. If there's something I can say or share that would, help somebody make healthier choices for themselves and get out of that funk. Or, I mean, for me, I mean, sometimes I call it the pit, but that was like misery. And, I don't wish that on anybody. So if there's something I can do to that's within my ability and not getting too sucked up into myself. But like if I can help, it's something I aspire to do now. So that's a joy as well.
What would you say to younger you, or what will you say to your children about
Uh,
alcohol?
if I could talk to younger me, I mean, I think it would be a, a conversation about, you may not listen to me, because I know younger me did not listen to anybody in my family that was trying to tell me something. That, it would be, I think, a lot of the behavior that you're seeing, whether it's in the army or in school or whatever, is not normal. And don't let yourself think that it's normal. It's kind of a tricky question, because I think, again, genetically, I think I'm disposed towards using alcohol in a way that's not healthy. But sometimes I wonder, if I had a do over and, maybe I'd had role models as to what it's like to drink responsibly, maybe things would be different. But that can be a slippery slope to go down too. So
Yeah.
try not to linger on that too much. But, and like for my own children, I mean, knowing what I know now, I mean, I might wish that they just choose not to drink from the get go. Um, I think that's highly unrealistic. Um, they're coming into being teenagers now, and, there's, I feel like I know that experimentation is going to be just a part of their growth. And it's scary. But what I could tell them and what I hope to tell them is, just be aware that, like, you are not set up for success with this. I know you're going to experiment, but, this is something that came very close to ruining my life. And you just have to be careful. And, if you're ever on the fence or you need to talk about it, I want you to call me, because I can certainly share firsthand what it's like to go down a bad road. So,
Yeah. Do you go out now? Do you go to like concerts and sporting events?
um, I'm not huge on sports. It depends. Like, if concerts really something I want to go to, I think I'm more reluctant to spend money on them at this point because they've gotten kind of out of control. But I do, and
Or weddings?
um, I haven't been to a wedding since the last one. I kind of fell on my face. I mean, I went to my own wedding, and it was a dry wedding, and that was a good experience.
Share about that a little if you, I mean, a dry wedding. What do you mean?
We did not have alcohol. I mean, it was my wife is somebody that will have a drink once or twice a year, um, and you know, obviously, I'm not drinking. I'm not opposed to others drinking because I do believe that this I think this problem is way understated in our society, but I also know that not everybody has that problem. I know that it's possible to drink responsibly. I just can't do it. But our wedding was interesting too because it was in 2020 in the middle of all the COVID shutdowns, and I think we were only allowed to have 30 people to begin with. So it probably wasn't anything that was going to get out of control anyway. But yeah, we just had a decision not to serve alcohol. Um, that wasn't the focus. My wife's father officiated and he's sober as well. And it just didn't really seem like it would bring anything extra to the event. So we, uh, we left it out. Um, and if anything, I think that's progress because if you had asked me 10 years ago what my wedding would look like, I mean, there absolutely would have been alcohol. Um, And honestly, if I can remember from my first wedding, I mean, I think it involved me getting pretty housed and then, passing out early. So I'm glad to not have that and be able to fully remember the experience. So, um, and I think where you're going, I mean, I do still go out and, it's something where I feel comfortable enough now. Like if we go to a restaurant and there's nowhere to sit, we will sit in the bar or, I went to a concert this summer. I mean, it was an outdoor concert at the zoo, but they're still serving very expensive alcohol
Mm-hmm.
in multiple locations. Or we're gonna have some people over for Christmas, and you know, we don't drink, but like we've it's gonna be small. But like, if you want to have a beer or you want to have wine with your Christmas dinner, then
You got to bring it.
yeah, you got to bring it. We're not gonna buy it, but you know, I'm okay with that.
What do you drink?
Um, honestly, it's kind of boring. I mean, I wish I could say there was more, uh, you know, uh, more exciting options. I've never been big on soda. Like if I'm feeling fancy, I'll drink a root beer, when we go out, or a lot of sparkling waters. There's a bunch of different brands, but honestly, I drink a ton of water and I drink coffee.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's helped me feel, honestly, it's helped me feel good. Like I did not want to quit drinking and replace it with something else that
Yeah.
was probably not good for me. I've always been a little on the heavier side since I got out of the army. I didn't need to make that any worse. But um there was a period where I experimented with non-alcoholic beers or zero beers, and there's some conflicting opinions depending on where you are, in the sobriety movement. And what I settled on is if it helps you get by or not drink, real alcohol, then more power to you. I'm not going to judge somebody. Um, I put those down as well pretty early on. Not because I think, there's enough residual alcohol or anything for it to really be a problem. I think for me, what I noticed is I was seeing some of the same behaviors
Mm.
in how I was drinking them, um, that I just didn't like. And I mean, it's kind of silly too. I mean, if you're crushing a six pack of non alcoholic beer and you're not even getting a buzz, then what are you doing? You're just making it so you have to pee like six times a day. Like, so it didn't really work for me. Um, but I have friends who I would still call sober who do drink those, and I'm not going to judge them. I just think it's something else that I tried and didn't really fit with me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. What do you do for fun?
um, I really like camping, hiking, backpacking. Um, I can be a video gamer. I find with kids, I don't really have a lot of time for it anymore. Um, this year, I've really been trying to focus on getting my weight down and a lot of running, going to the gym. I set some goals coming up. I'm gonna do a 15K in March and try for a half marathon in April, which is something I would never have thought I was capable of doing. So that's fun. Um, I enjoy photography. Um, kind of a goofy hobby. I'll shoot videos of like some of the backpacking trips I go on and put them on YouTube. And they're not winning any awards. I think
Mhm.
I have like 26 followers, but it's fun for me. So
Yeah.
do it.
A lot of those things sound like they're more enjoyable, I'm sure, not hungover.
Yeah. And honestly, I just wouldn't have done them.
Yeah.
I mean, even when not actively drinking, I have some remorse over the days lost to recovery from drinking. You know, I pretty consistently now get up between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning, whereas, even if I wasn't drinking that day, I'm like crawling out of bed at like 11 o'clock or noon, you know, if I didn't have to go to work. That just, that's something I don't miss. It's miserable feeling that way. I mean, I'm somebody that, when I'm hungover, I have a headache. I pretty much feel like I want to throw up the whole time. Uh, I'm an easy puker. You know,
Mhm.
those, those things aren't missed at all.
Yeah. The feelings of like anxiety and stuff, have those gotten better quitting drinking?
Yes, I mean, I think it's mental health and substance abuse can be very intertwined, and I still have um, a diagnosed mental health condition that I'm treating. That when those two things are intertwined, I mean, it's infinitely worse, I think. And for me, I wasn't really able to effectively treat the mental health condition until I stopped the alcohol. Because I mean, there were quite a few years where I was taking medication and trying to treat mental health, and lying to my doctors about how much I was drinking, and them coming to a point where they told me, look, we know you're drinking, and we also don't really know if this medicine's working or not because you're drinking so much. So my mental health treatment didn't really make any progress until I removed the alcohol. And I would say it's anxiety, depression, like all of those things are far better and more manageable than they ever were while drinking. So,
What's one lesson alcohol's taught you that you want to share with the world?
hmm. I think in line with my story, I mean, I think alcohol uh, and its effect do a really good job um, convincing you that it's your friend and that you don't need to feel um, what you don't want to feel and your emotions. And um, I guess I would share with the world, like, don't listen to that. Like, you can live this life and feel it in its entirety. There's going to be good, bad, and everything in between. And for me, I don't feel like I've really lived a fulfilled adult life until really in the last 5 years, because there was so much escapism for me that I wasn't really experiencing life. I wasn't feeling the bad. Um, after a point, I stopped feeling the good. And the other thing with the bad things that happen, I mean, alcohol just makes it worse. I would drink to escape, and it felt like that worked for a while, until it stopped, and then I was just wallowing in it. Like, so I think, an addendum to that, like, don't let it convince you that you're not normal, or that you can't live life without this, because that's something, you know, I had to learn very much the hard way, but I'm grateful for it, because um, what I want to share with the world is that you could live a totally normal, productive, happy life without this substance that we've been convinced through advertising and media and everything that you just have to have it. I mean, that's not true.
Had a good day, celebrate with a glass. Had a bad
Yeah,
day, deal with it with a glass.
totally.
Yeah, yeah. I know you've listened to at least Zach's episodes.
Yeah.
So hopefully you know I love to do quick fire. Would you join me in quick fire and give me a sentence or two on how being undrunken has affected some key areas of your life?
I will try my best.
Awesome. Totally okay to squirrel too. I love squirrels.
Okay. All right.
So, how has being undrunken affected work?
It has allowed me to work, because by the progression for me, by the time I really got to the end, I could not keep a job. Uh, I never actively drank at work. I did on occasion skip out for lunch when I thought it was tolerated, but mostly recovering from drinking impacted me to the point in my last job where they said, you know what, we're good. We'll see you later. Um, I've uh, started to rebuild a career. I worked at my last job for 6 years, and progressed there. I recently made a career change to something I've always wanted to do. Um, and that's going really well. And that just would not have been possible if I was still drinking.
How has being undrunken affected money?
I have quite a bit more of it. I don't feel like I'm broke all the time. Um, when I first started trying to stop drinking, I put this app on my phone, and I'm forgetting. Oh, my phone's off. I forget the name. Um, but you check in with it every day. And did you drink today? And you say no. But when you start, it does this cool thing where it asks you to estimate how much money you've spent on alcohol. And I gave it an average. I said $25 a day or something, which is a lot. But sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. But at this point, the app is telling me that I've saved about $35,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And, when I look at my finances, I could see that. And, you know, vice spending, whatever it may be, can get out of control. And, yeah, it's sobering to see how much money, even an estimate, that I'm not spending on alcohol.
Yeah. Wow. How has being undrunken affected love life?
Um, that's another one where it's allowed me to have one. You know, I mean, I suppose maybe I could have found somebody else that was drinking and invited that into my life. But I, for the last really since 2013, when my first marriage ended, I mean, I was alone. I mean, I had some moments where, I would, you know, get into relationships with people that they were always short lived, and I wasn't able to give people what they needed because of my drinking. Um, or they were drinkers too, and you know, it just was unhealthy in that way. Um, but in getting sober and sticking to it, I met my partner, wife that I have now. Um, and I'm grateful every day for it because I'm able to be present. Um, I'm able to be somebody that she can rely on. Um, you know, and I'm just able to have a loving relationship, which just wasn't in the cards before.
How has being undrunken affected family?
Um, I mean, it's pretty much entirely been a positive. Like I mentioned, I'm able to have, a developing relationship with my children, which I had largely given up on. Um, with the rest of my family, um, it's gotten immeasurably better. I mean, had gotten to a point where, everybody just assumed I was drinking or was drunk or recovering from being drunk, late to any kind of family event, leaving early so I could go drink, not reliable, um, somebody that had to be bailed out of things, not things that you'd want. And, today I feel like my family can count on me. I feel like they can have a relationship with me where I'm not constantly needing something from them or financial support. And it's just, yeah, you can't really put a measure on it, but it's a lot better. I've been able to make peace and settle differences and, rebuild relationships, and just really grateful for that. So,
How has being undrunken affected spirituality?
it's expanded. That was one of my big resistances to 12-step programs, and a lot of it, I thought I knew what I was talking about, why I wasn't going to do that, and I was wrong. I think some of that was me just not wanting to make a change, but I've been able to develop a spirituality that is my own. I'm still unsure about some of the big questions out there. I mean, I really identify as agnostic. you know I'm not going to tell you that there's not a God, and I'm not going to tell you that there is one for certain either. What I've come to believe that is that there are things bigger than me and Ryan, and that I don't have all the answers. Uh, and it's an evolution. I mean, I think it's something I'm continually growing my understanding of. I spend a lot of time in nature, and that's where I feel the most at peace. That, I've worked on meditation. Um, I've never been good at prayer, but it's something I'm also working on. Even if I'm not sure anybody's listening, I think sometimes just putting it out in the universe and having good intentions out. Um, I think, there's no downside to that. So, uh, spirituality for me is an evolution, but it's one that I'll continue in, until it's my time to check out. So,
How has being undrunken affected friends?
um, it's interesting. It's really made me appreciate the friendships that I still have. Um, One of the things I would say is I used to think I had a lot of friends when I was still drinking. Uh, I've come to believe that most of those were bar friends. And when I stopped drinking, I stopped hearing from those people. So I certainly have a diminished pool of people I would call friends. But I would say that those friendships I have now are quality, real relationships with people that I can rely on. You know, these are people that if I get a flat tire on the road, I can call and they'll come help me. You know, all those people I was drinking with probably wouldn't have been able to come help me or would find something better to do. Um, not exclusively, but I have a lot more friends in sobriety now. And that's good too. If I'm really struggling, there's people I can call or go do something with. Um, and, even the friends I have that, don't subscribe to that, I would say they're at least sober curious now.
Mhm.
And I think the short answer to the question is I just greatly appreciate the friendships I still have.
How has being undrunken affected self?
I think for me, in some ways, I'm a recovering Catholic and I still have a lot of guilt or shame about some of the things I did while drinking or how things turned out. But that being said, uh, I'm coming to a point where I can say I'm proud of myself and I can look at myself in the mirror. Um, Whereas for a long time, I couldn't. I would avoid it,
Mm.
and that's a really great realization to have now, and that I feel like I can look myself in the eye, that my people around me can be proud of me, and I can believe them. Like, um, yeah, it's allowed me to start feeling good about myself, which was something that was absent for a long time.
That's awesome. Ryan, I wanted to say this earlier, but we were on such a good roll. Thank you for your service.
Oh,
I
thank you.
really, that's a, it's a big value for me to appreciate those of you that choose to serve. I really want to honor that. And I want to thank you for gifting me with your time and for sharing your story. Um, you were very eloquent in sharing your story. So
Oh,
thank you for
well,
that
thank
as
you.
well. You made my job easy. Is there any last words that you'd like to share?
um, I think anytime I try and talk about my experience or my journey, I like to end with, uh, I felt for a very long time that I was unable or would never be able to stop drinking. Um, and what I'd like to share with anybody that's listening is that really, if I was able to do it, it is possible. for you. It's not always easy, and it can take a lot of work, and there are slips and backslides and things, but I think it's most important that if it's something you want, you keep trying. It is attainable.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to sharing more with you as we continue to explore being undrunken together with friends. I hope the Undrunken Podcast is helpful and inspiring to all of you out there. So if you liked this episode, please send it to a friend and help share these stories with more people.